Hello everybody and welcome to a Road to Cheltenham Let's Talk Racing Christmas special, and for that reason we are not only joined by Ruby Walsh but also by Joshua Stacey and by Andrew Blair White. Ruby, this is going to be a different kind of show. Are you looking forward to it?
Can't wait, yeah. What time is it over?
Delivered with just the right level of boredom as well. Josh, how about you? I need more.
Yes, slightly more enthusiastic from me. No, looking forward to it. It's been 4 good days of racing, and there's some highs and some lows as well, some disappointments to talk about, especially pointing towards the Cheltenham Festival.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your opinions and also yours. Andrew, you looking forward to this?
Yeah, very much so. It's been a great few days back at Leopardstown for myself, so really enjoyed the racing and looking forward to getting into it.
Okay. Well, we're going to go sort of chronologically ordered through the racing over the past 4 days. So the obvious place to start is with that brilliant performance from the French raider Français in the Cortez-Star Novices Chase. Ruby, I'm going to start with you. This was just breathtaking for me. I think in a strong field, and I'm maybe betting without Galopin de Champs, this was the performance of Christmas.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Start to finish, I thought James Reevely was brilliant on him. An unbelievable jumper, got a bit close to 5th last, maybe one of them fences in the back straight anyway, but I thought he was really good, set a really good pace, attacked his fences, won quite readily, beat Hermes Allen and Kilbeg King, but I thought it was a really good performance, Lydia. It was beautiful to watch.
It really was, but Andrew, it sounds like we're not going to be seeing him at Cheltenham, at least not this season.
No, they're going to take that break and stay in France, which you can understand, and maybe take a look at the King George this time next year, which will be very exciting when you think of who could turn up to that race in 12 months' time. But I echo what Ruby said. It was absolutely fantastic to watch. I think it took a lot of people, but maybe slightly by surprise, just how impressive he was, and the fact that even kind of when they slightly came to him at 2 out, he was able to go again, despite having set pretty good fractions in front. It was hard not to be impressed.
It was a devastating performance. Josh, what would you do now if you were Paul Nicholls with Hermes Allen?
A tricky one. I thought, I'm not sure we found out if he stayed or not. He seemed to plug on reasonably well, but wasn't for catching. The winner was very good. I would possibly look at trying it again over 3. We didn't really get a definitive answer. The tricky thing is, where do you go? I know that they're looking at the Cotswold Chaser Stay Away Fay, so they're having to step out of novice company for him. Is there another option? Maybe the Reynoldstown at Ascot. Will he love that deep ground? You probably wouldn't think he would. So he's probably going to be a tricky horse to place before the ground dries up a little bit.
What did you think, Ruby? I was quite pleased with the way he stuck to his task, given how close he tried to race to Français.
Yeah, I was too. I was expecting him to fold even more than he did. He didn't blow me away at Newbury. I thought it was a better performance. He just ran into a freak. And I can completely understand why Noel George is doing what he's doing. I mean, the Grand State de Paris is worth more than the Cheltenham Gold Cup.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to run him in a novice chase in Cheltenham, you're looking at running for $250,000 less. So, why would he do that? He's not going to run him in the Gold Cup as a 6-year-old. So, yeah, he's doing the right thing. And Paris, the Grand Steep, is their big race. So, he's the one for me. Hermes Allen, I'd be sticking Brown Advisory.
And they definitely do the right thing with Français. I mean, they've got a French owner and a British owner. The French owner it's their dream to win the Grand Steep, and the British owner, it's their dream to win the Gold Cup. He might, you never know, be able to do both, but the first step is the Grand Steep. Christmas Hurdle, let's move on to him. Finally, we saw Constitution Hill coming back, Josh. Did we learn anything new about him?
Not sure we learned anything new. I think he was expected to beat them as he did, and I think we just knew that the machine is still in working order. He will go to the Beulah Hurdle on Trials Day. It was the International at the December meeting, and I'd imagine it will be another Constitution Hill benefit. And again, we saw Stateman. I'm sure we'll talk about him later, but he beat him so convincingly last year. It's hard to see where that gap shortens anyway. So no, he's still as good as he was before, and it's hard not to be very, very impressed by him.
He's just as brilliant, isn't he, Ruby?
Yeah. The Grubo is not a bad horse, and in 2 strides, Constitution Hill just blew him out of the way. I think he's an exceptional racehorse, and he'll have to do it again and again and again before everyone really appreciates how good he is. I mean, you look at the horses that are now novice chasing, that went novice chasing just to avoid him.
Yeah.
That's the respect that people within horse racing hold him in, and I hope he gets going for long enough that he can become an even bigger household name. He's a flagship horse for National Hunt Racing. I hope he keeps winning.
Now, Andrew, I think that now that they've decided they're going to be doing the same thing because that's what he's best at, he is going to have to string up a series of impressive victories. I'd like to see him do something different this season, perhaps come to Punchestown at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think they'll certainly think that through, especially if they can get the better estate man is in an as impressive a way as they did at Cheltenham last year. I'm not sure whether they will be or not. That they've nothing to fear. This is a horse that seems to be able to do anything. You can make the running on him. You can sit in, take a lead. He's just so versatile. He goes on every ground pretty much, and he's a sight to see. You know, he's one of these horses that you'd pay your admission fee alone to watch.
The only thing is he's so close to the bone with some of his hurdles. He's such a good hurdler. One day he might tip up, a bit like Isterbrak. It might happen, mightn't it, Ruby?
Yeah, he does. Last in the fighting fifth, last in the champion hurdle. He lives on the edge, but the best hurdlers do. That's why he has such an advantage, and the margin for error is minute. I hope he doesn't catch a top bar with a hoof, because you know that kind of fall, the speed he'd be going at. I hope it never happens to him, but he does live on the edge, and I'm afraid there's nothing he can do about that.
Okay, well, let's move on to a race that we might well disagree about, and this is the King George. Ruby, had Shishkin not taken that inexplicable stumble, and maybe you don't think it's inexplicable, after seemingly jumping the two out cleanly, would he have won?
I don't know, is it inexplicable? Does that mean unexplainable?
It does. Go on, explain it.
I don't know why he did it, but to me, it's quite
That's
clear.
Inexplicable.
Well, he moved his right foot in and caught his left foot as he was going forward. He's not the first horse to ever have tripped. He won't be the last one. So that's what he did, and he got rid of Nico. I have no idea why he did it. He didn't put his feet in the right places. I don't know. That's probably what
Some people have posited it was tiredness. That's why. I don't think it was.
No. I think he was going to win. I think the way Shishkin races nowadays, that I think he was going to find more and find plenty more. And I think he was going to win, yeah.
Josh, your view?
I think he probably would have won. I was disappointed. Brave Man's Game is my favourite horse in training, and I know Allaho is thought of obviously in the realms of the gods, the racing gods. If only Shishkin had made a mistake and gone right, and Brave Man's Game would have had a clear passage through, it would have been quite nice for him. I don't know. I think Shishkin would have probably won. I think what was nice to see is he seemed to have real enthusiasm. Obviously, people were wondering whether he was going to start, but Nico kind of forced it on him. He jumped really well. He seemed excited by the task, and yeah, I'm not sure. I think he probably would have. I actually think that maybe if he didn't inconvenience Brave Man's Game 2 out, I think Brave Man's Game was a length up on Allaho, jumping 2 out, and then he was about 2 lengths down, 5 or 6 strides after 2 out. Maybe Brave Man's Game would have won. It's a possibility. I'd be interested to see what Ruby thinks.
The flip side, Ruby, is that Paul Tannen was forced to commit on Allaho. Wouldn't he have held on to him for longer if that hadn't happened 2 out?
Yeah, it might have if both sand maybes. Allaho didn't convince me at any point in the race. Brave Man's Game didn't convince me at any point in the race. Contrary to some people's beliefs, I don't think they went too fast and cut each other throats. I think they went too slow and were a patch on the horses they all once were. And they fell in a hole off a steady gallop, which suggests that none of them ran up to scratch. And Hewick, fair play to Shark Hannon for having him in the race. Fair play to Gavin Sheen for keeping rooting away and keeping going. But I think he ran by horses that are on the way down.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. Andrew, what's your take?
Yeah, I think like when you look at the way Shishkin finished off in the Betway Bowl when he beat Ahoy Senior, it's very hard to think that he wouldn't have hit the line strong from where he was. I think he had the 2 market principles beaten at the time. And it just seemed, as much as they didn't maybe go that quickly, that it was just a stronger stayer that ended up kind of sweeping it up. It kind of reminded me of watching a few of the races years back at Leopardstown, where like Carlingford Lock would come from the clouds and kind of go past horses that were tiring. And I don't think Brave Man's Game and Allaho, I think if it was another furlong, it would have just gotten further and further between Hewick and the 2 of them. So I get what Josh is saying in terms of, I think Brave Man's Game had Allaho covered more than the neck or the short head. He beat him in the end. But I don't think they'd have been able to repel Hewick one way or the other.
I also think Nico definitely got Shishkin jumping. Whether he was relishing the task, I really don't know. I mean, he needed rousing along at the start. He needed nudging along during the course of the race. I can see him saying, "Nah, no thanks." At some point,
I agree with you. I didn't think he was that enthusiastic. I think Nico forced him into where he had him. I agree with you there, Lydia. Definitely.
And I think the whole race, in terms of the Gold Cup, I just can't have any of them. I'm afraid. I'm really sorry, but I just can't have any of them at all.
When you look at Allaho, he won 2 Ryanairs that he had not won, but he was in control of after 5 or 6 furlongs. You couldn't hold him. Like, he basically bowled away with Rachel Blackmore the first year. Paul Town let him run the second year. They were clocking well over 15 seconds a furlong in the King George, and Allaho was settled. To me, he never showed up. Harry Cobden never looked happy. They weren't even going that hard. I mean, they've been so far behind Ile France. It's not funny.
I do think they probably wound it up a very long way out, but that's more to them being has-beens, can't do right nows, and won'ts. The 3 of them that were actually involved in the finish. In terms of worst price coming out of the Christmas period, surely, Josh, it's got to be Allaho 7-2 for the Ryanair. I'd want at least 3 times that, wouldn't you, for the reasons that Ruby's just described?
Yeah, possibly. Does Ruby think that a step down 3 furlongs would help him back at a place where he's been so good?
Allaho.
Yeah.
He looked like he had a pace to come down and trip to me anyway.
He's lost his...
That's what it looked like. Now, maybe it was the travelling, maybe, I don't know, a whole host of different reasons, but the Allaho we saw at Kempton, my shortlist for the Ryanair anyway.
We've got some viewer questions at this point. Ash Simmons.
Anyone take a good price about a horse in the Ryanair, no?
16-1, Envoy Allen said.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot that. Yeah.
on the road to Cheltenham. And the other 2 of us, you're the only one who's put anything up so far. Were you pleased that Henry ducked the Savills?
I probably wasn't on Wednesday because I was looking forward to seeing him in there and Fast or Slow. I only proposed a price that I have not taken myself, so I have no financial interest other than getting bragging rights over you, Lydia, and so no. But I have no doubt Henry did what he thought was best for his horse.
Yeah, Kinloch Bray seems to be the plan for Envoy Allen. Right, so viewers' questions. Who wants to take this? How does the panel feel about the real whacker with a look to the future? This is from Ash Simmons. Andrew, what do you reckon?
Yeah, he's becoming a hard horse to place. He's obviously going to be at the top of the handicap in these big handicaps. Hasn't been himself. He was slightly lame at the end of the Paddy Power. Kind of ran a listless race in the King George. Do you try and run him maybe in a Cotswold chase back at Cheltenham? He does overall have a good record at that track. Do you maybe wait for a Denman chase, which never is that competitive? So I don't know, maybe try to find one of those graded races that's going to be 4, 5, 6 runners, maybe get himself back out in front, having a bit of an easy time of it on the front end, and see whether that can spark back some enthusiasm. But he's looked a relative shade of what he produced last year when winning the Brown Advisory. I know that form maybe in the co-lighted day hasn't maybe stood up as people thought it might, but at the same time he's been well below his best this year.
One thing I would say is Pat Neville's only had 2 winners this season, and at the time that the Rio Waka ran, he'd only had 1. It's conceivable that the Rio Waka is not running to form at the moment. That said, I'd go Ultima, personally. Yeah,
I can see that point. There's plenty of good horses in the past have run off big weights and run good races in that type of regard. Again, though, it's just tough to place because he is going to be of a big weight in those races, and he's not clearly showing himself up to open grade 1 class.
I felt rather than saw you frowning at me when I said Ultima, Ruby. What did you think?
I'd be wondering why, if you were going to a handicap chase, you'd be going to one that's worth 70,000 instead of one that's worth $500,000.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, I take that point. My reasoning, I think, would be that he jumps Cheltenham so well, particularly the new course. That would be my reasoning.
He could go for the 2025 Ultima. If he was mine, he'd be heading for the 2024 Grand National.
Interesting. Okay. So you got your answer, I reckon, Ash. That's what Ruby would do, and he's looking more in the long term. Right. This is one for for you, Josh, really. Did Shishkin hampering Brave Man's Game cost him the King George? Asks Racing Gav.
I think how much I love Brave Man's Game, I'm always going to say yes and hope the Brave Man's Game had the ability to do it. I don't know, probably not. I think he'd have beaten Allaho more comfortably. He was beaten a length and a half by Hewick. Did he lose 2 or 3 lengths? Probably, but again, it would have just been a target for Hewick to aim at, and possibly would have still beaten him. I'm going to count it as back-to-back King Georges, though, just for my love for the horse.
I do hope he comes back.
Did you get paid out? You got paid, did you?
They didn't have the same thinking in Paddy's when I went, but yeah.
It can only be a matter of time, though. You know, bookmakers pay you out for all sorts of things these days. Did you feel it would have won? Okay, pay. Ruby, Sean Hanlon asks, will you be knocking Hewick for the Gold Cup?
Well, I've been knocking Hewick for the Gold Cup. What did I say about him? I thought he was value at 50s, 33s. I didn't think he was value at 12s.
That's what you said.
I would think he's value at 50s, 33s for the Gold Cup. I don't think he's value at 12s.
Where do you think he'd have finished had he not tipped up 2 out last year?
4th.
So do I.
I think 3 horses outside him. Galloping, Brave Man's Game, and what was the third
Conflated.
One? Conflated were going to finish in front of him. I don't think Conflated will finish in front of him this year. I don't think Brave Man's Game will finish in front of him this year. But I do think Fast or Slow will. I do think Jerry Calam still will.
Really, Shark Hanlon seemed to be thinking immediately afterwards that the Grand National is really Hewick's race. But after you win a King George, you've got to go Gold Cup, haven't you? You absolutely have to.
He said it should be going Grand National, but I'm going Gold Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think he's going both. Right, let's move to Aintree. First of all, Josh, this is a rescheduling, a rejigging with the BHA and Jockey Club racecourses. The Tolworth used to be run on the first Saturday in January at Sandown. It's now been moved to Aintree, run on Boxing Day, and renamed the Formby. I realise one swallow doesn't make a summer, but on the basis of one running, that was a good deep field and a good race, wasn't it?
I agree, and I think with it being at Aintree, possibly more Irish trainers might have a look at it as well. That was definitely the case with Gordon Elliott running Farron Glory, who was unlucky when coming down. I think because we've got the spring festivals at Aintree down the line, it's another option for these big trainers to run their very good horses at a track that they're going to need experience at later down the season. I think if it was ran at Aintree last year, you'd have seen a horse like Irish Point, who was struggling to find a Grade 1 novice hurdle this time last year that he could realistically win. I think he'd have probably gone to something like the Formby at Aintree. And I do think that possibly Willie might use it more. Gordon definitely, I can see him using it, and it's produced a good race here. I think for me, Django Bay has only enhanced the reputation of Jericho de Repine and probably Will Mount, who both of those seem to be held in high regard at Seven Barrows. I think he was very, very good, but whether he's the best that Nicky's got, I doubt it. I think that the whispers about those other two are far more encouraging.
I like it when horses do it on the racetrack and connections say they've got a better Porsche at home. They pay on the races rather than the whispers, don't they? But first of all, you said, Josh, that you thought the Farron Glory was unlucky. Andrew, he went 3 out. Was he unlucky?
Yeah, I think so. I think he was coming to win his race, really. Given again, when you look at the Royal Bond, he hit the line strong in that race. When he made a mistake at the last, he still was able to overcome that. It's funny, I think this time last year, the Royal Bond novice hurdle was probably seen as not being that strong a piece of form just after, because 4 of them were within 2 or 3 lengths of each other. I know some people were trying to pick it apart, and then obviously the first 4 went on to win Grade 1s. I'm not saying that's the same this year, but certainly the overall impression I felt at Fairyhouse at the time was that we hadn't seen a very good Grade 1 novice hurdle there. And yet Farron Glory looked like he might be able to go on and win another one here. And King of Kingsfield, who I'm sure we'll discuss later on, was very impressive, beating Mirror West. So maybe it wasn't just quite as bad as people were making out. I think Django Bay, I'm with you, Lydia. I like these horses that actually go and do it. It's very, very easy saying there's better things at home, but until we see it, I'm yet to believe it. So he's a tough horse. He's now done it twice where he's looked potentially in trouble at the last and has managed to ground it out. He did it on debut. He's done it here. Whether the form is going to amount to being a supreme novice form line, I'm not so sure. but it's very hard to take anything away from the winner in that count.
Same question to you, Ruby. Would Farron Glory have won?
He looked like he was going to win. He was travelling best when he fell at the second last, I thought it was. And I guess looking at the Royal Bond, King of Kingsfield has gone and won. On Tubber was slightly disappointed. The third horse was Baileystock at 138, beating only 3 lengths. I think he was the one that probably made people question the strength and depth of the Royal Bond. I think Farron Glory would have won. As regards more Irish horses running in it, there was 8 runners in last year's Talbot, and Arctic Brazil ran in it when it was down in Sandown. York Hill won one in Sandown. It'll depend on what you think of your Royal Bond winner. And Irish Point, I don't think if that race was an entry last year, Irish Point would have run it. He'd have still run the Lawlers. He only just went down to Cham Kiley, who finished behind him at Ferryhouse in the Royal Bond. Some years you'll have Irish runners, other years you won't. It'll just depend on the strength and depth. And I'm not certain, even looking at the novice hurdle in Ireland, compared to the novice chasers, I think the novice hurdlers are a little bit behind.
I think it's a much more unformed division. There's a question we've got later on about the Supreme market. I think for whatever reason, we haven't seen the form lines develop at this stage so far. Let's move on to the Racing Post novice chase, shall we? Founder 50 won it. My Mate Mozzie in second, Sharjah third, Fassel Vega fourth. Only the 4 ran. Andrew, what was your take on this quite confusing race? I found. Yeah,
quite unsatisfactory, really. Founder 50 jumped markedly out to his right, which he does have the tendency to do at the first, and kind of knocked Fassel Vega sideways, and he didn't look relatively comfortable after that. Hard race to really get a handle on. I think Founder 50 is a slightly difficult horse to place, because I'm not sure when you're looking at maybe Cheltenham markets whether he'd have the speed for 2 miles in an Arkle, but yet I think he can slightly be a deceptively soft finisher over 2.5. I think he probably needs somewhere in between, which the 2 mile one at Leopardstown does provide. If I was to take a horse out of the race for a race down the line, I'd take out My Mate Mozzie for the McGull at Aintree. I think he'd be absolutely made for it. Sharper left-handed track over 2 miles. He's obviously gone to Cheltenham this season. I'm sure they'll run in the Arkle, but I would have thought he'd have a fantastic chance of winning a Grade 1 at Aintree if he's able to slip around like that.
And Ruby, how about Fassel Vega, beaten favourite here, so often the apple of Willie Mullins' eye, to the point where he was blaming Paul Townend initially for defeating the Supreme last season. Is this horse just bang overrated?
Yeah, it could be, but he definitely hasn't shown on the track, Lydia, what he has shown Willie Mullins at home. I know Vatour bombed out in this race many moons ago. I thought it was a muddling sort of race to watch. There wasn't much of a gallop. Although there was at times, I seemed to go quick and slow it down. It was stop-start, very stop-start. But he's blowing out Fassel Vega, and he's dented his reputation, and he has to rebuild it. Simple as that.
Could the ground, at that point, it seems bizarre given what we ended up on, could the ground have been a bit too quick for him? He's got that really extravagant...
Possibly, but if the ground was too quick for him, the time is atrocious. It was 15 seconds below standard.
Yeah, I know.
So, it doesn't stack up on the clock. It stacks up to a really disappointing performance. Full stop.
Yeah, it is. It is disappointing. Paddy's Rewards Club chase I'm going to move on to. This was Willie Mullins and JP McManus Monopoly. Dino Blue, the mare, stepped up to open Grade 1 company, Josh, and won. What was your take on that?
I think in isolation, she was very good. She's clearly improving, and it would be interesting to see what they do with her now. Do they stay at 2? Do they go up to 2.5 for the mare's chase? She's going to have to carry a Grade 1 penalty there. Obviously, the big disappointment was Captain Guinness. He's had so many chances at trying to win a Grade 1. He's not done it. I'm not sure what was up, whether he was just too bad to be true, whether there was an issue. But I think the winner is just constantly improving, and it's hard to see that if she does stay 2.5, that anything's really going to come out the woodwork and beat her, especially after that performance.
Will she stay 2.5, Ruby?
She might. No reason to suggest she wouldn't. She jumped really well. Obviously, Gentleman to Me, we know from form, is a horse that improves for runs. Captain Guinness blew out like that on one occasion before at Tipperary and was reported to have a heart issue afterwards. And his run in Leopardstown was very similar to that.
Well, interestingly, the vet reported him to be clinically abnormal, didn't he, after that race? Yeah. So it does, because
it was like someone switched him off when they turned the back bit.
Yeah, so hopefully he's going to recover from that. Let's move on to the Paddy Power Future Champions Novices Hurdle, Andrew. The win for Caldwell Potter over Predators Gold. Now, you've got some interesting thoughts about this race.
Yeah, I thought the front two, as much as people are going to probably hone in on the disappointments of Down Memory Lane and Daddy Longlegs, which I suspect you can probably rule a line through both of them, given on account of the ground. Midway through Wednesday, it was probably at its worst. It had been raining all day. It had really gotten into it. I thought these two are very good horses, potentially up in trip in time. I know Predators Gold won his maiden hurdle over 2.5 and was dropping down. I just thought he might be the horse to take out of the race. I don't know whether he was coming to win the race or not, but he made a terrible mistake at the last. Obviously killed all momentum in trying to get there. I just wouldn't be surprised if these two horses were to face each other again later on in the season, that form may well just be turned around. Caldwell Potter has the experience edge on him. This was only the third start for Predators Gold under rules, and I thought he might be the one to take out of it. It was a big performance. He was beaten 5 lengths, but I think it was 38 lengths back to third. So he was well clear of some decent horses in behind. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's still in the reckoning of Grade 1 spring races.
And how about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. I'd be interested to see what they do with Predators Gold, because Ballyburn was very impressive today. And Willie looks to have a couple of really nice 2.5 mile novice hurdlers. Il Atlantique's one who we might see in the Lawlers of Naas. So whether Predators Gold will get a really tough handicap mark, he's going to need to run a couple of times before. But could they look at a handicap? Could they look at a Martin Pipe? Will it be low enough in the ratings to run in a race like that? Possibly. I know Jigginstown love to target that race, so maybe he could be one for that. But I personally don't think this form will stand up massively towards the spring. I think Caldwell Potter is good, but I think if you asked Gordon what he thought before the race, I think he would be very disappointed that Down Memory Lane wasn't better. And he disappointed. Daddy Longlegs disappointed. Be interested to see what they do on their next run. But they're going to need to be much better than that to live up to their reputation.
Now, Daddy Longlegs, Ruby, was a character that you and I particularly liked after his win at Turles. I'll be honest, I was slightly surprised that he was the chosen one for this race, because he looked slightly gawky to be in this deep, this quickly. Or was there another reason, maybe ground-lated or something else?
Maybe the reason for why he ran so bad, but the reason he ran was the options are, Lydia, were that race there or the 2.5 at Naas. There are very few winners hurdles, not just for novices anyway in Ireland. You could have went to Limerick and ran against the race Noble Yates ran in that Sam Majest won.
Yes.
But very few novice only winners. No novice only winners and ones at this time of year in Ireland. So when you've won your maiden hurdle, that is the option for you. He ran really disappointingly. Maybe Al Manzour on really soft ground. The couple of walks in the parks got stuck in it too. Down Memory Lane, Facile Mode, and the two with the stronger staying pedigrees, a Mask Marvel and a Marteline, were the two that kept going. Probably on their dam sides, the pedigrees were stout, more national hunt horses as well, and they were the two that came to the fore. So I think that's the way the race transpired. And as well, Tuesday, Wednesday, 26th, 27th in Leopardstown, you're on the flat tracks. So you're in the middle of the race course, you're on the ground that's watered all summer. By Wednesday afternoon, it had rained on top of that. Compared to when they moved on Thursday to the inner side tracks, ground was much better. So I'd say it was just the worst of the ground, and a good few of them got stuck in it, and the two that handled it came well to the fore.
It's a good thing to remember. I mean, you remind me every year about that, and that if you're looking at Wednesday's form, that you're really so young horses, inexperienced horses, just starting out, are actually dealing with the worst of it.
Yeah, they're on the worst of the ground, and they got stuck in it. A lot of them, because even Down Memory Lane, who looked fast and looked a really good horse down Royal, he was beaten too early as well. Loads of them were beaten so early in that race, and the other two pulled well to the fore. I'd be surprised were Willie to run Predators Gold twice more. He'd have had a really hard race. He won't run him inside 4 weeks. That's the end of January. You're on top of the Dublin Racing Festival then. Would he try and cram another run in after that? I'd be very surprised if he got 2 more runs into him for a handicap for Cheltenham.
It's not his style, really, is it, to do that cramming type thing? Okay, on to a viewer question. Adam asks, why doesn't anyone want to take the Supreme Market by storm? Who is standout at this point? I think the answer is nobody is standout, Adam. But at the moment, if I'm looking at the betting, you can get somewhere between 6 and 8s for Jericho de Repenay. You can get between 6 and 10s for Jean to Share, who's had something of a setback. Will Mount, who runs in the Challow tomorrow, Saturday, is somewhere between 10s and 12s. Caldwell Potter, the aforementioned, between 10s and 14s. Who's your idea of the horse that leads the Supreme at the moment, Josh?
I think the best maiden hurdle's been ran this season was when Firefox beat Ballyburn. So I think possibly him, but he's going to go up in trip to the Lord of the Nace. They clearly think he's a Ballymore horse and will improve for a step up in trip. So I think on that basis, I'd look at Henderson's 3, Django Bay, Will Mount. It wouldn't be a great thing that he's going over 2-5 at Newbury in the Shallow. So probably Jericho de Repene. I know we've seen very little of him, but we are going to see him on the same card at Newbury. Possibly him for me at the moment.
Andrew?
Well, I just wonder, there's going to be some horse that's going to come that looks like it's going to go to the Ballymore that will have to reroute here, because at the moment I could name you 6 or 7 very good horses seemingly going for the Ballymore and not very many of them going to the Supreme, whether that is a Firefox, whether it is an Il Atlantique or something like that, even a staying 2-miler, like sometimes that can suit. Like I remember when Appreciated won the Supreme, everyone was calling for him to go up in trip all year, and he was just a strong stayer over 2 miles that season. Jericho de Repene will know more probably after Newbury in a day's time. We will with Will Mount as well, but it's just one of those. I find it hard to pinpoint who's definitely going to stay at 2 miles. I wondered, I would be interested in Ruby's thoughts on It's For Me. I know he's slightly disappointed at the back end of last season. I thought he was okay in his maiden hurdle, and he looked like a horse that may stick at 2 miles. He's quite a keen horse.
Ruby?
I don't really have a strong opinion on It's For Me, and I thought the horse today looked a Supreme horse all over.
Ballyburn.
Yeah. I thought he looked. I was looking for Willie's quotes here. I didn't hear what he said, and he was kind of saying he looks like a 2.5 miler. Doesn't know if he'll go 2.6 at the Dublin Racing Festival, but I thought he looked a Supreme horse to me. The way he jumped, the way he travelled, stairs. Maybe the last non-stair to win a Supreme.
Well, quite. I mean, we talk about that paradox every season, don't we? About how you need stamina to win over 2 miles in the Supreme because it's an end-to-end gallop, and yet the Ballymore can quite frequently be steadily run, and you need pace. Yeah,
exactly. I don't know. I'd be throwing my tuppence worth in anyway. That's what I'd be suggesting for Ballyburn. Probably won't be listened to, but that's what I'd be suggesting.
10s to 16 to 1 is the range you can get for Ballyburn for the Supreme. Let's move on to the Christmas hurdle, the Jack de Bromhead Christmas hurdle over 3 miles at Leopardstown. This was run at a crawl, Ruby. Did we learn whether Irish Point is a player for the Stayers hurdle at Cheltenham?
He's definitely a player, Lydia. It's hard to say he's guaranteed to stay because Home by the Knee is not a front runner. He didn't want to go in front, and the other jockeys quite rightly didn't help him, and they followed him around, and it turned into a strong last mile. But Irish Point was really impressive. He has all the right credentials. His style of racing really suits it. A bit like Chupu, he races behind the bridle. He's an accurate jumper. He's not flamboyant, and he won with loads of authority. So yeah, he definitely put his hat in the ring. And Jack Kennedy will face an interesting choice come March.
He really does, Josh. And then, of course, from the upstarts in Britain, for the long work hurdle the Saturday before, we've got Crambo beginning to push through against the old guard.
Yeah, I still think that the Irish set the standard. I was really impressed with Irish Point. I think the only thing is I think the general feeling is that they won't run Irish Point at Cheltenham. I think they are going to run Tiupu. It's not definitely confirmed, but I think at the start of the season they were working their way back from the Aintree hurdle because he won the 2.5 mile Mersey at Aintree last year. They might have to reconsider that. Again, I have no idea who Jack would pick. I think whoever he did, I'd probably land on them for the race.
Funny enough, Darren Harper wants to know, Ruby, which one you would ride. If they both went there, Chupu or Irish Point, which one would you prefer to ride?
Oh, Irish Point.
Why?
Because Chupu's got beaten in one already.
He was quite young, though, wasn't he, when that happened? Relentless. Andrew, how about you? What was your take?
Yeah, it was very impressive. It's hard to get a gauge, as the guys have mentioned, due to how steadily run it was. And I know he was an even money favourite, but he probably would have been 2s on if this was being run over 2.5 miles against the horses he was up against. And he put the race to bed in very impressive fashion. You've got to love the way this horse jumps. As Ruby was mentioning, he's just so accurate. He's so slick. And he's got a bit of class, and that will always go a far way when we're looking at these races. I know that the original plan was obviously to potentially go for an Aintree hurdle, but I don't see how you could put in a performance like that, even if you have another horse in the race, and not run him in a stairs hurdle. Two bullets is often better than one, and I can't see, especially in a weak enough division, how he wouldn't be right in the mix.
And then you throw, Lydia, you throw the third one into the mix. So on Monday, if Bob Bollinger goes and wins the Relkeel, where does he fit in for Rob Courtney? So you have 3 horses. He's not really going to go 3. Does he look quick enough to win a champion hurdle? I wouldn't think so. So the Ancient Hurdle would look the obvious place for him. So I'd be thinking, yeah, run Chupu and Irish Point in the stairs. You're avoiding Constitution Hill. You're not going to know where Constitution Hill is going after Cheltenham, before Cheltenham.
Well, he won't be going to Punchestown. I don't think. Judged on last season, I don't think they'll go there again.
Never know.
I think they're more likely to go to Punchestown, stick at 2. It would be my view.
I think that'd be great, but you never know. I wonder. I'd be the same as Andrew. If I was Brian Atkinson, I'd want 2 bullets below at the start.
Yeah, I want to see more from Bob Bollinger before I believe that he's back, to be honest.
So do I.
Right, let's move on to the stunning performance in the Savills chase. Andrew, you can take the floor for this. Galopin Des Champs, right back to his roaring best, maybe even slightly better than when he won the Gold Cup.
Well, it's certainly right up to it, definitely. He was just a completely different proposition from Flagfall, really. The way he went down and attacked the first couple of fences, which he didn't do in the John Durkan. He was sticky at the first couple. He went down and flew them and was right upside, conflated. And I always felt conflated. He's probably not quite the same horse he used to be, but he was always going a half stride quicker than he wanted to. And Jerry Colon was the same. And the way that down the back second time round that Paul was able to constantly get almost a quarter length on Jerry at the majority of fences was just putting him under more and more pressure. And the fact of the matter is that he's won the race by 23 lengths. I know Martin Brazel will be sitting at home thinking he's got a great chance with Fast or Slow, and I wouldn't put him off. He's obviously 2-0 up against Galopin Des Champs, but there's people there that are thinking it's a certainty he's going to uphold that form. And well, Galopin Des Champs was behind Appreciated in the John Durkan. He's beaten him half the length of the straight at Leopardstown there yesterday. So he was a completely different kettle of fish. I think probably him being up in the van just probably keeps his mind on the job. He doesn't maybe go to sleep like he has been sometimes when he's been in behind horses. And you can't see why they wouldn't ride him in similar type of vein now that they know he stays the Gold Cup trip come March.
Willie Wellens was saying as much immediately afterwards, Ruby. And that microcosm of, at the 11th and 3 out as well, what Andrew was just talking about and what we discussed quite a bit on Road to Cheltenham, the way that Galopin Des Champs is very quick away from his fences. Jerry Colon just takes a little bit time to regather himself. I'm not saying that was a critical difference because there's 23 lengths between them, but that is a difference between them.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose looking at it coldly this morning, would have expected Jerry Colon to be more than ahead in front of Capodanno.
Is there anything in where they raced?
Possibly, but I still would have expected Jerry Colon. I think Jerry Colon underperformed. I thought he was a little bit buzzy in the parade ring, which is not like him. He was on his toes a bit. I don't think he brought his A game. Now, his A game, even if you give it 10 lengths, still leads him 13 behind Galopin Des Champs. But I do think he should have finished closer than he did. I think Galopin Des Champs is a better horse, and it's 2-1, Andrew, with Fast or Slow. They have met 3 times.
Oh, yeah, sir.
I just don't think Jerry Colon and Capodanno, they were too close together, for my money. And I do think Galopin is rock solid, and Fast or Slow would be the new opposition. That could be at the Dublin Racing Festival before the Gold Cup in Cheltenham.
Could well be. Josh, your take?
Yeah, I think going into it was an important race for Galopin to win. Obviously, big Grade 1, but he's had excuses the last previous 2 starts. One was at the back end of last season at Punchestown, maybe over the top after a long campaign, and then the second one was over 2 miles, 3.5, which would be a trip too short for him. So there are excuses, but at Leopardstown, I didn't think there was any excuse, and he was so impressive. I thought conditions were favouring Jerry. I think the market spoke volumes. He was pumped in. It was soft ground. It was a real treacherous war through mud, and I thought that would suit Jerry. He was very disappointing, but I think Willie Mullins did a tremendous job. He was such an exuberant novice, and he did a tremendous job at getting him to settle in behind horses, relax, and I think they did that because they wanted to see whether he'd stay the Gold Cup trip. They knew he stayed the Gold Cup trip, so they could ride him more aggressively. It's what I wanted to see before, and it's what he did, and he was so good. And I think if he turns up in that form in March, nothing will get near him.
Yeah, tend to agree. Fast and Slow, the imponderable. L'Imprese, of course, has got to come back as well, and we might see him in the Fleur de Lis, the brand advisory winner of 2 seasons ago and the runner-up in the King George last season. Right, let's move on to the Fahine Novice Chase, Ruby. We're not going to talk about what happened after the line and the fallout from the home turn. I mean, if you want to hear about that, Nick Luck and I both discussed that at length on his podcast today. What's your take on the actual form, Ruby?
I thought Gaelic Warrior was really good. I'd say Tom probably wants to come back in trip. Not sure American might perform, but I thought Gaelic Warrior was really good. He was more measured in his jumping, he was more controlled, and how Patrick was able to ride him, that freshness from Punchestown was gone. And I don't think he could have done much more, really, could he?
I thought he was brilliant, really brilliant. And the advantage about him going to the Turners would be that he'd be on the new course, not the old course. He's only ever been on the old course before, which is tighter. I think the fences as well, I don't think he'll be as exaggeratedly going out to his right. And, I can understand why he's 5-4 favourite. Gareth Bridge wants to know, Ruby, do you think Gaelic Warrior will go to the Turners, or could he drop back to 2 miles and Facile Vega step up? What do you think is Gaelic Warrior's ideal trip?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't have ever thought 2 miles, but maybe fences have made him a way faster horse. Willie Mullins also has Grange Clare West and Factifile.
Yeah, like Factifile. I'm glad you mentioned him.
And I thought he was really good the other day. I thought Factifile, a bit like Gaelic Warrior, they both look like stayers as hurdlers, but as chasers, especially as novices, neither of them look like they really need to be going extreme distances. They're both brilliant jumpers, and I think it'll be an interesting one. I honestly don't know what trip. It depends on where Willie goes next with Gaelic Warrior. Dublin Racing Festival, does he go 2 or 2.5? I think that'll tell you.
Josh, let's wrap up Grange Clare West, who won the Neville Hotels Novice Chase today, beating Corbett's Cross, who was really patiently exaggerated pacing tactics on him and didn't jump very well in the early stages. What do you think of Willie Mullins's novice chasing pack? Throw in Factifile as well.
Yeah, I was really surprised at this from Grange Clare West. He's previously not put 2 performances together. He's very good fresh, and he seems to be slightly disappointing on his next start. But that wasn't the case today. Stayed really well, jumped really well, seemed really straightforward, more of the novice herder and the bumper horse that we saw. And I think he's put his hat into the ring, beat Corbett's Cross, who I don't think was at his A game whatsoever. But I'm not sure where you go with him. To me, he doesn't. Although he was good today, he doesn't seem like an out-and-out thorough battle over 3. Say a stay-away Fay jumping the last. I think a stay-away Fay would relish the hill. I'm not 100% sure Grange Clare West would. I think I'd like to see him ridden aggressively over 2.5 miles.
And you, Andrew?
Yeah, no, he was impressive. He's tended in his maiden hurdle and his beginner's chase. He's probably put in his best performances. Like last year, his maiden hurdle would make you think he was almost going to be a surefire Grade 1 novice hurdler, and didn't quite work out that way. He was very good today. He was very impressive. Corbett's Cross, for me, I don't think he's jumped well on any of his 3 starts, really. He was very poor at Naas. He was better at Fairyhouse. But then again, he's beaten 3-card Bragg a half length. Now, 3-card Bragg is a good horse, might be a national hunt chase horse, but I don't think he's any better than that. And then again, I don't think the exaggerated waiting tactics were by design. I think just the first couple of fences almost seemed to catch him out, and he was a bit further back than he wanted to be. I think Florian Porter was quite clearly the disappointment of the race. Didn't seem to be many excuses for himself. I thought he'd go very well today. Seemed to have everything in his favour, and he just slightly disappointed. Maybe that run in the Florida Pearl as I don't know whether it's taken it out of him or whether it's upset him a little bit. He seemed to be A1 at Cheltenham in October time when beating Broadway Boy. So hard to know what to make of the form as a whole, but you can't take it away from Grange Clare West, who was very impressive.
Okay, let's wrap up this Grade 1 review with the Matheson Hurdle, Ruby. Stateman seeing off Ampere Pass. The latter, not jumping as well as he can do. Is that because of the ground or because he was in deepest of his life so far?
I'm not sure. Maybe lacking a little bit of experience up in gear. Feel the Derry booked out. They went a strong enough gallop most of the way. Now, he was in Darrell's hands a bit early in the race. Thought he'd every chance though. Switched out good half a furlong before the last third. He'd every chance to get the Statement, who just had too many guns for him. But yeah, there can be improvement in his jumping. But I thought the last 50 yards, one was going one way and the other was going back the other. And I would be surprised if Perry Pass can turn that form with Statement this year.
He was ridden covered up as well, wasn't he, after being a little bit keen last time?
Yeah, and he was still a bit keen, but I don't think if you reverse the tactics, I can't see how that's going to work either. I mean, giving Statement a lead and a target, don't think that's going to turn the form around either. I just thought the better horse won.
Josh?
Yeah, I agree. Interesting that Willie's thinking about going out in trip with Impere Pass. Be interesting to see where they go. Will they go straight over 3? Will they try a 2.5 mile race? I'm not sure where you'd find one of those. But he could end up in the Stayers Hurdle. He would be a fascinating clog in the wheel if he was to run there. And
Andrew?
Yeah, look, Statement's absolutely superb. I suspect they're now trying to think, how on earth do we beat Constitution Hill? But I'm sure they won't probably sit on his tail like they did last year. It wouldn't surprise me if they maybe go a little more forward.
What vis-a-vis Constitution Hill, Ruby? Any greater hope? The hope rests on Paul Townend's view that Statement just didn't turn up last season, isn't it?
Exactly. But I tell you what Statement will do. He will ensure that Constitution Hill has to bring his A game. Because if he turns up and underperforms, Statement will have him. But if Constitution Hill brings his A game, he'd be impossible to beat. But it's horse racing, you never know.
Yeah. That's why we run the races, rather than just theorising in 4 boxes as we are now. Those are our thoughts about the Grade 1s. So let's talk about some of the action that was outside of the Grade 1s. I've asked the gang to think up which horse they like best outside of the Grade 1s over the Christmas period. So I'm going to start with you, Josh, and you are heading towards Leopardstown and which horse?
King of Kingsfield. He's a horse I've always loved. Beat Mirror West, who was disappointing on his hurdles debut. We've been waiting a long time to see him. He was a supreme favourite going into it. I'm not sure you can take that form literally, but he's one that I think Gordon will be looking at a handicap for. I think he knows he's limited. I think he knows he's not going to be winning Grade 1s. He's had 4 runs over hurdles, which is crucial. It means he qualifies for a handicap. If he gets in a Martin Pipe, he could go that way. Would he want 2.5? I'm not sure. I think he could be one that turns up at a county, and he's got to be ridden. He's clearly benefited from being dropped out. He's got to be ridden very cleverly, but I think that he could be interesting in a race like that.
Okay. While we're talking handicaps, I know you're interested in Absolute Notions. Now, I think it's only fair, as this is a proper mashup between Let's Talk Racing and Road to Cheltenham, that we talk about some of your anti-post thoughts. And you had a thought about the Potemps for this horse?
Yeah, he was entered in the qualifier. He was a non-runner because of the ground. And Ruby's already fallen asleep just listening to the word Potemps. He's not going to skip the Potemps now. He's got 2 targets. He's going to go to Warwick, and if the ground's heavy there, he's going to go to Exeter on the 12th. What I quite like is either of them we're going to find out his British rating. So hopefully he runs at 1, qualifies, and all roads will lead to the Potemps. Okay,
I should be waking Ruby up in a moment, but first I'm going to go to Andrew for which horse?
Marine Nationale for me. I thought as Chasing Debuts go, it doesn't really get much better than that. A lot of pressure probably on Barry Connell and Mikey O'Sullivan, just in terms of the horse hasn't been out for quite a while. He's obviously, some people have been musing that he's been kind of dodging clashes, and he wanted to go to Navan and then he didn't because Facile Vega was there and the ground went against him. But the horse jumped absolutely super. He was fantastic. He's probably a horse, if you're looking back at last year's novice hurdle form, that would be better with a lead. But it was nice to see him be, tactically versatile. You'd think he'll now go back for the Irish Arkle at the Dublin Racing Festival. Of course, Leopardstown's a track that means an awful lot to Barry Connell. He's a local to the place, and I think he'll love nothing more than going back there with a huge Grade 1 bullet to fire, and then obviously onto the Arkle, which he's now odds on. Is that a fairly rotten price? Yes, of course it is at this time of the year, but at the same stage, I wouldn't want to be laying him with anyone else at the moment for that race. He's been absolutely superb on his chasing debut. And you think if there's improvement to come, I think Barry Conn was saying after the race he was only 75% fit. If that's true, which I'm not sure whether it would be or not, but if that is true, that is a frightening prospect.
Yeah. Like, it sounds like you and I are similar, that we prefer to sort of say what we see as opposed to what we hear. But nonetheless,
I think so. I think overall it seems to put me on a better track than learning all the whispers and rumours.
And Ruby, how about you? Which one did you take out over the Christmas period?
I love Marine National as well. I thought he was fabulous. Loved the way he jumped. And I thought Jade de Grugy was good. She won a 2.5 mile maiden hurdle against the gelding. She beat Butcher Hollow and Whale Harbour. Not so much the opposition, it was just the manner in which she did it. She had been quite keen on her only run in France. She settled lovely. She jumped beautifully. Look, she'd have to come down and trip for the Mayor's Novice at Cheltenham, but it looked like she could, and I thought she was really impressive.
Okay. And my one was going to be Factor File, but we've already covered him. I thought he's taken a huge step forward. I really liked what he did based on how he's moved forward from his debut when he got beaten. He looked like he'd learned plenty. He was really fluent. And as Ruby said, he looked like he'd got pace as well. That the intervention of some fences made him look a little bit sparkier than he had done previously over hurdles. Right, so we've come to the end of the show. Josh, Andrew, was that all right? Did you enjoy yourselves, Josh? Did you?
I did, yeah. It feels like I've won a Make-A-Wish competition, and I'm here, so I'll enjoy the moment.
What, being in a box on TV with Ruby?
That's it, yeah. And you, Lydia, of course.
I thought he meant you, Lydia.
more so, Lydia.
We know the truth. We know the truth. Don't worry, Andrew. You?
Yeah, no, absolutely superb. Great fun, and obviously great racing, and great to be with yourself and Ruby.
And Ruby, thank you very much for staying awake for the whole time.
Cheers, Lydia. Thank you. Tipping a horse up into Pertemps who hasn't even qualified yet. That is...
When he wins, we'll come back to this moment.
Very well.
Right. Ruby and I will be back in normal form for Road to Cheltenham on Thursday, the 4th of January. You know, the usual time, 9 o'clock on Racing TV. Thanks to Josh. Thanks to Andrew. Thank you very much for watching. And all it remains to say is a very happy new year to you all.